Money Radio, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. And joining us now, Laura Bramnick from TalkRealEstateAZ.com. That's the website, TalkRealEstateAZ.com. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sinclair.
Laura Bramnick is an attorney. She is also a real estate agent. That's a great twofer.
That's a good twofer, yes.
Because you could represent someone who is a real estate client. It may not cost them anything extra to get legal representation.
Yes. If they're buying properties specifically, that's something we could definitely talk about and can be very helpful.
And you can help in the negotiation and provide legal advice through that process.
Draft the documents.
Yeah, because it's not always the boilerplate documents that you want to use.
No, and if you do use them, you want to make sure that you have all your details in place in addition to the boilerplate.
That's right. Arizona real estate licensed. You've got your legal license through the State Bar of Arizona.
Yes.
Specializing in real estate. Your phone number 480-624-2705, 480-624-2705, and the website, which is an easy way to remember, TalkRealEstateAZ.com. TalkRealEstateAZ.com. You really do cover everything from A to Z.
I try to.
Yeah. Let's talk about rental properties today.
Okay.
Buying and selling rental properties, and this can be complicated, particularly if you have tenants in the rental property.
Yeah. A lot of people think if they're landlords, oh, I'm going to sell the property. For whatever reason, they've decided it's time to sell.
Sure.
And I just have to tell the tenant to leave so I can sell the property. Or maybe stay till close of escrow and then leave. But it doesn't work that way. If the tenant has a lease in place, that lease stays in place. You can't unilaterally cancel the lease because you want to sell the property.
Okay.
And so I'm surprised how many times I get calls from tenants who say, my landlord says I have to leave. And so the issue is, do you have a lease in place? What does the lease say? Certainly you can sign a contract. If you're the landlord and you're being proactive, you can have in your lease that, you know, upon so many days' notice you can cancel, even though the lease may expire several months in the future.
Right, or if you think you're going to be selling in the future,
Right.
you don't give out a particularly long lease.
Exactly. So it's not illegal to put that in the contract, but most contracts don't have that. Most contracts say, you know, you have a lease for a year, 6 months, or 18 months, or whatever it is. So let's say that your tenant has several months left on the lease and will be there most likely after you sell. Basically, you have to disclose that to the potential new buyer and give them a copy of the lease and say, look, you have to honor this. And they would also have to honor the amount of rent that's paid during the term of the lease. So, you know, these are details that you have to make sure that you discuss.
So that lease essentially transfers with the sale of the property.
And so does the security deposit.
Oh yeah, that's another good point.
So you want to make sure that you understand that, you disclose that. However, many tenants, after their lease is expired, stay on a month-to-month basis. So if you have a tenant that's on a month-to-month basis, or if you are the tenant, your landlord just has to give you the proper notice under the lease, which is usually 30 days from the date your rent is due. So that it's now March 29th. And so if you want to cancel your lease as a tenant or a landlord and your rent is due on the 1st, you have to give notice before April 1st to have the lease expire on March 1st.
Okay,
so many people think
March 31st.
Yes, March 31st, sorry.
Okay, so let's give that example again.
Yeah.
So for an example, today is March 31st. You could give 30 days notice and they would have to be out by May 1st, but
Yes.
if you wait 2 weeks, then they're essentially going a month and a half.
If you even wait 2 days, you know, because once April hits, you have to give 30 days before May 1st.
Okay.
So a lot of people make that mistake, again, unless their lease says something differently. also as a landlord, you can actually negotiate with your tenant to terminate early. So sometimes, you may want to reduce their rent for so many months or give them some incentive.
You brought up a good point, though, about security deposit. Somebody's coming into a property, there may have been a tenant there who's been there several years.
Yeah.
You don't really know what the condition was when they moved in. Is it a good idea to get documentation and then maybe do an additional walkthrough?
Definitely. If you're buying property where the tenants live there for a while, you want to make sure that you inspect the property and talk to the landlord, and maybe do a walkthrough with the landlord so they can tell you what was there at the time and what wasn't. Now, also under Arizona law, you're supposed to do a move-in checklist and a move-out. So also the landlord should provide you with their move-in checklist. And that also discloses if there were certain gashes in the wall or tears in the carpeting.
Oh, this brings up another point, though. When you're buying a property or someone's selling a property, you want to look at the property.
Yes.
The tenant's in there.
Right.
You don't get to just walk in on them.
You do not. Again, the lease prevails, but Arizona law, unless the lease says otherwise, requires 48 hours notice.
Okay.
48 hours. Now,
And
what
it
if
has
the
to be kind
tenant?
of reasonable.
Yes. What if the tenant won't let you in? Then you have to take the tenant to court. You can't just walk in. And that's another thing people don't understand, is even if the tenant refuses to allow you access and it's your property, you can't break in, you can't walk in, you have to get a court order.
And then I imagine there are times when people have other uses and actually want the tenants out. In other words, I want to move in.
Yeah.
When I buy the property, I want that tenant out. That may not be the case.
No, and if you have a loan that requires you to be owner occupied, especially FHA, you have to move in within so many days. I believe it's 60 days. And if the tenant's not supposed to move out for 120 days, you have an issue.
Boy, you really do, don't you?
So you want to make sure that you know what your issues are and get them resolved before you sign the contract or become bound by it. Because as a buyer, you don't want to lose your earnest money because you missed a detail. And as a seller, you don't want to be liable for kicking your tenant out when you're not permitted to by Arizona law or by the terms of the lease.
Yeah, right. It's very tricky. Some details you really have to pay attention to.
There's some details that you really need to be aware of and resolve early on. And all that goes to, you and I talked about the due diligence, and ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah, and this is why it's so important to have an attorney helping you through the process on real estate, particularly on rental properties.
Yeah, and someone who's familiar with the standard documents that tenants and landlords use.
And that's Laura Bramnick at talkrealestateaz.com. Phone number 480-624-2705, 480-624-2705. Laura does answer her own phone, 480-624-2705, and the website talkrealestateaz.com. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Sinclair.